The Clean Power Hour is brought to you by Continental Energy Solutions. I'm Tim Montague, your co-host. Today on the Clean Power Hour, power lines are sexy. Local solar and storage is worth $478 billion to the grid. Elon Musk is trying to capture carbon for $100 million. He's issued a competition. We had that headline last week, but we really didn't talk about it. So we're going to dive into that a little bit and electrify everything. Snow plows, heavy equipment, they're going long on batteries and EVs. So we're going to get into that. Welcome to the show, my co-host, John Weaver, the commercial solar guy.
Timothy, I hope you're dug out of your snow. Otherwise, I hope everything is well with you. How are you?
No digging out here. We just got a couple inches, so
Okay.
no big deal.
Okay.
How much snow did you get?
Well, see, I live in New England, so, by default, I get respect from a weather perspective. They're like, oh, you're from New England. You're hard. But I live on the south coast of New England, which I call New England light, because I get the Gulf Coast that comes up the East Coast, and we're 5, 6, 7 degrees warmer than the rest of the state. And so instead of getting 8 to 3 feet yesterday, we got 6 inches of rain and 3 inches of slushy. And the rain came yesterday in the evening and overnight, and now we're at like 40 degrees. So there's less snow on the ground today than when yesterday started because of all the fun. So it's not bad at all. So I got to kick some puddles and knock over some big piles, but it ain't bad. Solar panels are all clean now. I can tell you that. Every
Nice.
panel is clean.
Yeah, I wish we would get more snow here in Central Illinois. It's very hit and miss. We've had a very mild winter, and so Chicago is different, and I'm sure that they got more snow. But I like snow. I like to ski.
There you go.
It's not great for the solar, but eventually we will have, I've been reading The Third Industrial Revolution by Jeremy Rifkin, which has got to be like 6 years old now. I don't know when it was published, but that dude was talking a lot about hydrogen back then. And so I would encourage people to go back to, he's got a couple of books about this, but basically the future that he predicted is now coming true. So pretty soon we'll all have a battery in our garage or basement. We'll all have a hydrogen fuel cell, and life will be truly resilient. In the meanwhile, we need more power lines. We need more innovation. We need more Elon Musks. I also want to clone Elon Musk, and as much as I'm critical of Elon, so he issued 2 weeks ago, he issued this throwdown. Hey, I will give $100 million to whoever invents the best carbon capture technology. And while I think that's a good thing, I also wonder now if he's just trying to get headlines, because he does some crazy stuff. A stockless yoked steering wheel on the new Model S, and I just don't know what difference $100 million is going to make. We do need carbon capture. And that story, when I posted it on LinkedIn, garnered like 40,000 views, which is wonderful, that there's so many people interested in carbon capture. And there were a lot of comments, John, that, well, we should just plant forests. And I want to plant more forests, and I'm a big fan of reforestation, but that is not going to dig us out of the hole that we've dug for ourselves, unfortunately.
Yeah, I like the 100 million. It gives more attention to it. It gives these ideas. There's already carbon capture prizes. I think there's an X prize for like 10 million bucks, 20 million bucks, and they're actually coming to the end of their program. Elon pushing something is always interesting because it's Elon and he's going to bring some attention. I really, first, I think what he's going to do, I think this is a business process. I don't think this is marketing. I think he wants to have carbon capture to liquid fuel for his ships. And so I think the goal is to capture direct from the atmosphere and go straight into the tanks of the rocket ships. That's what I think the purpose of this is. And if it's marketing, cool. $100 million toward marketing. It's probably really smart on his part. Keeps him in the news 24/7. But I really do think he's got a master plan with this that may or may not specifically be lower Earth's CO2 level, so we can let off a little more heat from the system. So we'll see what that is. But I think this has straight up business applications, just like the tubes. He's building a Mars civilization with fundamental technologies. And each one of these things, the cars, the electric cars, the tunneling hardware, the batteries, his brother is working on a shipping container food company. If you tie all these things together, you suddenly have a bunch of companies you could put in a rocket ship, land down someplace, and it might be able to exist independently. And if that's called building a civilization, to go, a McDonald's to go civilization. And so I think this carbon capture is part of that. I don't know that answer, of course, because what's in his brain is fun and deep, but I think there's a purpose to it.
How do you convert atmospheric carbon to rocket fuel? I'm just curious. What is the chemistry there? Do you know?
I know that methane, I mean, first off, the CO2 that fuels give off is a reaction mixing oxygen and those fuels and fire and all that stuff. And so you get CO2 as the hydrocarbon chains break. If you reverse it, probably very expensive with electricity, but if you have excess solar electricity across Texas and wind, which they do, you can break apart and recombine things. We do have the ability to take CO2 to methane. And I think if you Google CO2 to methane, you're going to find that. There's a big movement to make CO2 to methane so that we can have net zero jet fuel, stuff like that. And
Yeah.
so there's going to be, there are mixtures. We're reversing the chemistry equation with some heat. And I don't know the math because I'm not a proper chemist. I can do spreadsheets though.
Well, in a related story, you covered the storage, the Q4 results from Tesla and
Yep.
storage. I'm going to put your blog on the screen here, and I'm going to Google methane to CO2 or CO2 to
Yeah.
methane. But anyway, it was a good year. It was a good fourth quarter for Tesla.
Mhm.
Record earnings across the board, right? But what did you blog about?
So, I mean, first off, when we do quarterly numbers with Tesla on my website, we're just focusing on the solar and storage. If you look at the numbers highlighted in the talk, it's solar and storage. There's nothing written about cars until the very end. And that's because the gentleman who helps edit my articles, Michael Lewis Gallant, he's a car aficionado. So he had to make sure we had good data on a little bit of the cars. So, but what I found the coolest little data point is that Tesla made about 40 gigawatt hours of battery cells, the large majority of them going to the cars, about 10x, 10, 12x times. Batteries deployed were about 3 gigawatt hours, which was about double last year. And Q4 was triple last year's Q4. So good year, good Q. Solar is starting to pump up again. He's still about a third or 2/3 of where Sunrun is. But it's going to jump, and Musk said he's going to be the biggest solar company soon, and I don't doubt it. With the solar roof and with their residential pricing, I don't doubt that they're going to become the number one solar company. I bet you, maybe not in 2021, but by 2022, I bet you they're up over 250 megs of Resi per quarter, and that's what they have to do to catch Solar City, because they're or Sunrun, because they're at like 200 plus, 210, 220, something like that. So, expect Tesla to be doing a gig of residential in 2022. That's my projection.
Yeah, it's noteworthy that Tesla is now going after the Illinois market. They had kind of pulled back back in 2019, but now they're going after the residential solar market. I have a friend who is working as an installer for Tesla. They're not installing Tesla solar panels. And we saw this week that Panasonic is even getting out of the solar panel manufacturing business. So I think it remains to be seen how hard Musk will actually go after crystalline solar panels. I get it with the solar roof, which is, the higher end. It's the Model S solution, right, for rooftop solar, which is super sexy. And if I was building a new house, and I would absolutely consider it. Love the durability of those glass tiles, and so, but I think about Musk has disrupted the car buying experience. When you and I bought our Model Ys, it was just an online transaction. It was like no muss, no fuss, no haggling. It's just, here's the price, here's the bells and whistles you want, boom, 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 done.
Yep.
And that's really what I want. So I I I do think that they can be successful in residential solar. It's a both and, right? We want Sunrun to be successful also. There's such
Mhm.
a huge market that it's these early adopters that are gonna, really make bank. And it's just and Sunrun has proven it now, really, that you can run a national solar company. That was a question mark for a long time. And it's not easy. I'm not saying it's easy, but it's doable.
I mean, Sunrun, as you heard, they're doing hundreds of megawatts a year of resident or hundreds of megawatts per quarter of residential solar. And that's it's not trivial. Maybe it's 170, maybe it's 175. That was their Q4 number. Sunrun plus Vivint. That's not a
Yeah.
that's a 170. That's a utility scale power plant every quarter that Sunrun is deploying now. That's pretty cool. It's a big utility scale power plant too, not even a small one. So it's pretty neat. Good job, Sunrun.
Yeah. Agreed. Good job. All right. Well, New York State is one of the leading clean energy, uh, both legislation and infrastructure states in the country. And there's a story about them now expanding their power infrastructure. I'm going to put a story on screen. Um, and what's noteworthy about New York is that they have a 70% RPS by 2030. Okay. That's in 9 years. They're saying we're going to have 70% clean grid. And that is really throwing it down, dude. I mean, I got to hand it to them. I don't know who's the brains behind that, but that's the kind of game that we need to be in as a species in order to step back from the brink of climate chaos. And so now they're saying, well, we're going to build hundreds of miles of new high voltage power lines, which you and I know is so important, right? Because as we electrify transportation, we're going to be using 3 times more, maybe 4 times more electricity. That's not even electrifying everything like heating and cooling also. So if you don't know about NYSERDA and New York State, man, check it out. They are really going after it. Have you ever worked in New York State, John?
Yeah, we've got our first project going through interconnection right now, and we got a few got a few in a pipeline, and hopefully might be doing something a little bigger in New York with some focus there with a sales guy. So New York is an important state to us, to our work.
Yeah. Yeah, it's one of the few states that has a storage incentive program. I'm conflating it with, in Massachusetts it's SMART, right?
Correct.
And in New York it's called what?
Well, it's called VEDR, Value of
Peter, yeah.
Distributed Energy Renewables, Distributed Energy Resources, and it's about what's the true value of that piece of hardware at that node in that utility with those characteristics. What's the value to the grid? And they're going to pay you whatever it is, no matter, you just boom, put it there. That's what you get paid for it. And so it's an interesting system. The power line thing in New York is big. They've got a lot of hydro in northern New York. Of course, they have Niagara Falls. So they're already a long way to having clean electricity, having a lot of clean electricity. In fact, if you charging a car, a Tesla, in upstate New York is the cleanest place you can charge a car in the United States, according to the data I've looked at. So upstate New York is already amazing with its hydro, and I do believe it's got some solid volumes of nuclear as well. And so we just have, emission-free electricity. So there's a lot going on in that state. Regarding, a quick thing regarding the amount of electricity, I think that if we were to fully electrify everything, including cars, it would at most double our electricity, I've read. And I think that's because of how clean and efficient EVs are. I'm not sure on that number. So I'm going to nudge you on that one, and we can
I'm
look it up and
quoting
talk about it
Elon
next show.
Musk. Musk
Okay.
says triple.
Well, I think others are
And
saying
he's
less
way
these
smarter
days.
than I am, so I trust in Musk.
Okay.
As critical as I am, as you see here, he is super smart and he loves to crunch numbers. So
We'll
okay,
double check it.
double, triple. I just say quadruple just to be on the safe side. Like the grid is one of the most important things that we have. Without the grid, we're dead. We are gone. It's not that humans will go extinct. We will no longer have civilization as we know it, though.
Correct.
We will be knocked back to the Stone Age or the Iron Age. And life, you can have a life and you can have a good life, but most people have a really shitty life.
True.
And
Hey,
electricity affords us a good life for a huge number of people. We have a long ways to go, and we need more people. We need more people to have access to electricity, and that's another reason, of course, that our industry is so important, right? Solar and batteries makes for microgrids in Africa and rural Asia and rural Latin America, and the less developed world can truly have the benefits of electricity without a massive power grid. But here in the West, we need to upgrade the grid, make it more robust, make it more efficient, and not so delicate and not so, you know, hey, yeah, you can install that rooftop array, Mr. Solar Installer, but you're going to have to pay $50,000 to upgrade the infrastructure. I'm like, come on, let's build the grid to adapt to renewable energy.
That's why on our document I have 4 articles, including 3 added to your New York power grid article, because right now there's a lot of people talking about the grid. FERC, the guy that they put there, his name is Glick. We talked about it a couple weeks ago. He's big on upgrading the grid. The governor of Nevada was visiting a lab the other day talking about HVDC, researching that. I saw a great story on volts by I can't remember the doctor's name. He writes articles for them, Doctor something, but he wrote an article about power lines, high voltage power lines in the Midwest, northern Midwest, being built alongside railroads. And he did a little research and found out that there's 100,000 miles of fiber optics next to railroads, and they pay a lease rate to these railroads because the railroads own right of way. And now power lines are being put in these right of ways, and he says that the royalty fees that railroads earn, or at least the real estate owners earn from electricity, is much greater than that of fiber optic lines. And so I'm suddenly kind of optimistic that some entrepreneurial type individuals who do transmission are going to figure this out, and we're going to lace the nation with a real HVDC network. I think there's a chance, just like our highway system, I think we might have a North America power grid that's HVDC. And I bet you we could get 90% wind and solar with no batteries, and we could get to 90%. And then if we include all the hydro and nuclear we've already got, I bet you we wouldn't need a huge amount of batteries to stabilize the power grid if we had a continent-wide HVDC. And right now, people are thinking about it. It's a non-zero probability. At minimum, a U.S. HVDC along the major highways and railroad stations. And I'm feeling optimistic over the next 20 years that can actually happen.
Oh, it can totally happen. Yeah. Well, we just have to get serious about it. And what I don't know is, okay, if you rebuild the grid using high voltage AC versus rebuild the grid with high voltage DC, and I want to talk about the story that you found on the AP about Nevada. What is the delta? What is the 20-year ROI delta?
Yep.
I'd love to see that report. If any of our listeners have that data, send it to us. We'd love to see that information. I just know HVDC is way more efficient for long distance, transportation of electricity, and the
Texas.
Chinese are doing it. They have built a large high voltage DC network, and they're expanding it. Um, we don't often think of the grid as a national security thing, but that's kind of how I see it. Like it is like the highway system, right? And that was built because of national security. And then we realized, oh yeah, and it's going to be a huge economic boon for the country because it allows people to live wherever they want to live and allows goods and services to get around a lot more efficiently. Well, guess what? We're in the information age, and electricity and information are what really drive the economy. So let's get serious about getting the next generation infrastructure under our belts. What is the deal with this story about Las Vegas? You don't see, Las Vegas and Nevada in the news a lot, other than, yeah, there is really good solar resources there. There's really good rock climbing. Apparently, a lot of climbers have moved to Las Vegas, and a lot of nomads live in Las Vegas and Nevada because there's low taxes. But what's going on with their research? Do you know?
It wasn't any specific that was covered in the article. I was more interested that a governor was taking the time to talk headlines and press around HVDC, around power lines. I mean, seriously, when's the last time you've had a governor be like, hey, let's talk power lines? Not too often.
Right.
And so this just got my attention because Nevada does, in southern Nevada, there's great sunlight, solid sunlight, open land, and the state wants to figure out how to build more. And if they can figure out how to export electricity to the Midwest, as the sun is at different points in the day, if at noon in Nevada, it's pumping electricity, but they can feed it to Oklahoma or to the East Coast or wherever, a couple hours. That's worth money. That's worth big money. And I just like that a governor is pushing it. They didn't really get into the specific tech. They were just talking HVDC. But I just like that a governor is making their time. And that I think matters.
For sure. For sure. Well, you found another story which you've blogged about. 478 billion of cash on the table, distributed solar and energy storage savings. And so what's the deal here? Solar and storage, it's the bee's knees, man.
The bee's knees. So Vibrant Clean Energy, they're a research group headed by Dr. Christopher Clack. I believe they're based in Colorado. They did an analysis and they did a projection going forward of the power grid as it transitions. And what they did, they said, okay, where the power grid is slowly cleaning. Here's our business as usual. Our business as usual is that zero line. But if we do a couple of things with the power grid, for instance, we force a clean energy standard, and this was their true innovation, or we truly include distributed resources as part of the power grid. If we do that, if we consider the tools, the capacity, the demand charges, the things that the distributive folks can do for the grid, independent of their own savings, if we get into that math, what's it worth? And what they found out is that if we start to really consider all the batteries and the solar panels that we're going to put on every single building, and we account for that with software and we integrate it into the grid, they're finding that roughly 1/4 to 1/2 of 1 cent per kilowatt hour for everybody who buys electricity, not just the people with the solar power system. They save their own money, behind the meter, whatever it is. So because of the nature of distributed being all the way at the end, and these are the volumes that they're talking about in these images, but because of the nature of distributed, of batteries, of capacity, of demand charge management, just all the various things that come with being distributed, it saves the whole power grid money. And it's going to save $500 billion because we account for that chunk on the right. In that image, if you look at the volume that's on the right, the distributed assets, the distributed added, that build out, which will be funded and owned by private parties, that build out will save everybody else $0.25 per kilowatt hour, which turns into $500 billion. And the reason this article is important is because if your politician and my politician knows that giving money to distributed, to private solar, giving incentives, rooftop solar incentives, if the politicians say, wow, this is actually a good thing for all of us, then they're going to be open to doing it because they're going to say this will be a sound investment in the locals. One, the installation teams will be local people, local company, etc. Number two, the local business will have a stronger business, a safer business, a better, its OPEX will be lower. And then number three, all of the neighbors, all the neighborhood will have cleaner air and cheaper electricity. And so this document is important to spread the word so that the policymakers of the United States recognize the cash dollar value of solar panels and batteries in local business. And $500 billion, man.
Yeah. Yep. And it's what is present for me is that there's credible data that we need 20,000 terawatt hours of storage for a renewable powered sustainable grid. And so that this story is saying we could get to 20% of that. And this is just in the US, I think, right?
Yeah, this story is US.
So this is real significant traction, so to speak. And so the cost of doing nothing, they're basically just saying, look, we're going to save money by cleaning the grid.
As well, not only by cleaning it. So what the logic is that already we're going to save money because the grid's already being cleaned. We're already going to take over wind and solar. So they said, okay, business as usual. We think we're already cleaning. We're going to be 60% cleaner, 70%. They did some various calculations. What they're saying is that by recognizing what we're already doing, we're going to actually account for savings because we're already going to be deploying distributed. What we need to do is now account for what that means. Since we're doing it, let's account for it. And now that we've accounted for it, let's support it because it's good money. It's good investment. This is money that comes right back to the people immediately. And so it's just, we got a big, beautiful thing. Let's measure it. Let's measure it properly. Because if we undercount what we're doing, it's like it's not like burning money, but it's ignoring good value. And that's not good. We'll underserve ourselves by ignoring this really good value.
Yeah. Absolutely. So I found this story about Komatsu and Proterra announcing a new collaboration to develop all electric construction equipment. I'll put the press release on the screen. Most people have never heard of Proterra, but they are an electric bus manufacturer, first and foremost, American. Their founder is from Illinois. And so interesting company. I think that he came from some other EV maker. I don't know if it was Tesla or one of the others, but he got, he cut his teeth in the industry and then went out on his own. And, I know the name Komatsu, of course, from heavy construction. You often see these ginormous earth moving machines. made by Komatsu. I assume it's Japanese, but I'm not sure. And there's a ginormous diesel engine on that thing typically. And now they're saying, well, we're going to electrify this off-road equipment. And it says Komatsu will utilize Proterra's high-performance battery systems for the development of a proof-of-concept electric excavator in 2021. So that's this year, before expecting commercial production in 2023 to 2024. And they have a picture here showing the battery system where there's typically just a big weight on the back, right? Because that's what allows the machine to lift heavy things on the front and not tip over. So it's basically a structural battery in a way, right? And I had no idea that this was going to happen so soon. So this is just really cool, I think.
I've seen mining trucks so far. I've not seen the heavy equipment to the best of my knowledge. There was one truck I saw that was really neat. The site is located, let's see, to go up the hill. So here's how it works: they go up the hill, they have to drive up, but they drive up empty. And then when they come down, they're full. And the battery charges on the way down, and it charges enough to get the empty truck up the hill. And it's like a perfect little mining little mix. It's the first time you set it up, that's the only time you got to charge the vehicle. Uh, they're making steel out of solar. If they charge this machine with solar power, that's just another little piece of that supply chain that's clean. And that's how I look at it. Just a piece in the supply chain. Because I want to be able to brag to somebody, and somebody's going to say, those solar panels still need fossil fuels. One day, real soon, Tim, we're going to be able to say, nope, that is not true. This is a fully renewable, energied solar panel from digging the ore to everything, and it's going to come. And this type of machine here, that's part of it. So that's neat.
And you found a story on Twitter about Ryobi making a little electric, I would call it a tractor that you can use to snowplow your walkway or driveway.
Yep.
I'm a big fan of Ryobi tools. I have some electric. I have a what's it called? I have a pole saw, electric Ryobi pole saw.
Yep.
I think it's 24 volt, and does a great job.
Yep.
No gasoline needed. So I do like the electrification of power tools and small tractors. This is just the tip of the iceberg, John. We're going to see so many things go this way as batteries become more affordable. There's now credible people like Chamath Palihapitiya, who I've mentioned before on the show, who really is questioning whether we have enough metals, precious metals, to build all the batteries that we need. He's very concerned about China, the politics, and the antagonism between the West and China. China does control a lot of precious metal resources. So I don't know. I haven't run the numbers myself. I don't know if we're going to run out of the stuff to make batteries, but I just think that it's a both and. We need to make better batteries, and we also need to go after green hydrogen. We already have brown hydrogen, or gray hydrogen as they call it, and fuel cells, right? So it's a both and. We so easily forget that we have 10,000 times more solar energy than we use, that could meet all of our needs 10,000 times. So what that means is we just need to convert a small fraction of it to storage, and boom, we're done.
I'm there with you.
And of course, the fossil fuel companies aren't helping. They have fought this tooth and nail for many, many years. And there's credible evidence that even though some of them are getting in the game, in the renewables game, many of them are still planning on just riding it out as long as they possibly can.
Yep.
And because there's money to be made. And I'm like, no, we have to think different. We have to think globally. We have to think about humanity and the survival of the species and the impact on future generations. Making money for the sake of making money is just not that interesting, right? Especially when it when it's a nail in the coffin of future generations. Like narrow minded. It's just so narrow minded. And that's why we need to clone Musk. As crazy as he is, we need more. Well, we're not going to get to all these stories we have.
Never.
Well, speaking of fossil fuels, though, the Biden administration is canceling fossil fuel subsidies. That's the other thing, John, is most people have no idea just how subsidized the fossil fuel industry is. And it's totally non-trivial.
It's in the tens of billions at minimum. Direct subsidies, well, sorts of subsidies. I mean, here, most of the subsidies are in various tax benefits. The Master Limited Partnership is one document that the fall industry has. That's a great financial benefit. I'm wondering about how much cutting these incentives, cutting these tax benefits, how much all of that stuff will actually drive up the cost. It's probably going to be minimal. I mean, we're probably talking 2, 3, 4% is my guess, but I don't know. I'm really interested in what these subsidies would actually do, because we do a lot of fossil fuels. We do a lot of volume of it still. We're still talking 60%, 70% of our electricity. Energy's even higher. So, 40 billion bucks. Yeah, okay, that's a cool number, but we do like 800 billion every year of fossils. So I'm interested. I'm interested in seeing how it actually, what kind of effect it actually has, this push.
I like how he's kind of come out of the gate shooting, and he's not going to get everything done that he wants to get done, but if you don't if you don't aim for the moon, right? Well, what's the expression? Aim for the moon and reach the stars.
No, it's the opposite. Aim for the
Okay,
stars, land on the moon.
yeah. So we've gotta set the bar higher, and the thing that, as we've pointed out here, is this is not going to hurt us economically. This is going to benefit us economically. Cleaning up climate change, you think something's expensive? Try cleaning up climate change. That is expensive and not that productive. Of course, there is money to be made in that too. And sometimes I do wonder, when I'm having a dark day, if that's the way some of these people think. Like, oh, yeah, I'm going to sell the East Coast billions and billions of pounds of concrete to build dikes around their cities. Um, that's what it's going to take, right? As the sea levels rise and the storms increase, you're going to have to beef up the infrastructure if you don't want Florida to be underwater or New York
True.
City to be underwater, as we saw when Hurricane Sandy made a direct hit.
I think the seawall people and the Dutch will do financially well in the next 20 years as the oceans keep rising and we keep building, because we're going to keep building on the water as long as we can. That seems to be what the game is. Everybody seems to be like, yeah, let's go for it. If we can get the finance, if the banks want to throw down the numbers, we can go for it. So it's what happens.
So let's close with two stories about residential storage. You
Yeah.
found a story in E&E News on um,
Flywheel.
flywheels. Yes, I'm going to put the story on screen. Flywheels are making a comeback in some ways, right? It's not new technology, but it's technology that people are revisiting. And if anybody doesn't understand, right, you create a big mass the size of a refrigerator. You put it in a safe place, hopefully like in a hole in the ground, and then you crank it up with grid power or solar power and just keep it spinning. And then when you need to pull from it, it's a generator and it generates electricity like a battery does.
Well, in this case, the flywheel is not. This isn't a generator. This unit, its purpose is to create a certain frequency so that it stabilizes the power grid in the house. Because generally, solar panels, they don't have stable current, frequency, voltage, all that kind of stuff. They're a little wobbly. And you need a battery to stabilize it, or you need the power grid. So that unit, if you scroll down a little bit, that little white unit right there, that is the flywheel. And so that
Wow.
unit will spin up, it'll plug into the wall, and it will create a frequency, 60 hertz,
Hmm.
and it will hold it there. That thing, I guess, will literally spin at 60 times per second, and it will hold it there. It'll work specific. This is designed specifically for residential solar in the U.S. that doesn't have a power grid or that doesn't have a battery, and will shut down due to anti-islanding laws when the power grid goes down. And this is designed to keep the power grid up. And the inventor thinks it'll cost $1,000. Now, one, not a lot of people have the power grid actually go down in the US. We have a relatively solid power grid. So it may not sell too much. But hey, $1,000. I mean, lots of people blow $1,000 on all kinds of dumb stuff. So $1,000 as a resilience tool for people that own solar power, that seems like a neat little adder. I bet you regular installers might start adding that with new projects for customers that don't want batteries. Be like, hey, you know, it's just a neat little toy. I like it. Thought it was cool. What about the hydrogen fuel cell that you saw for Resi?
Yeah. So somebody, I don't know who, this is a story in newatlas.com. World's first home hydrogen battery storage, 3x the energy of a Powerwall 2. And so this is a
What's the
refrigerator.
cost?
Sorry.
What's it gonna cost?
I don't know if they list the price. They say it's on par, I think, with the cost of a Powerwall, but you get more energy out of it. So you have a tank that stores hydrogen. You have a now. This is actually, the pieces and parts are tried and true technology, right? It's a matter of making it cost effective.
Yes.
And
A
uh,
fuel cell isn't going to cost the same as a battery, though. Fuel cells are like 3 times the cost of batteries.
well, wait a minute. Wait a minute, John. Toyota makes a fuel cell powered vehicle that costs less than our Model Y,
Where can you buy it?
California.
Really?
Yeah.
Right now?
Oh, yeah. You didn't know about that?
I've heard of that one. Is it the Mira?
Yeah, the Mirai,
Mirai. Mirai.
which it's too Japanese sounding a name, so most people can't remember it. But and you have to have a hydrogen grid, which we only have in California, which is why you'd never hear about it. They sell like 3,000 of those cars a year, but literally it's cheaper than a Model Y. So Toyota is putting a stake in the ground on fuel cells, and they're not the only ones. Rifkin talks a lot about Daimler Benz in his third Industrial Revolution book, and they've also done a lot of research. They have fuel cell buses. We have fuel cell buses running in Champaign Urbana. They're in the process of installing a hydrogen generating facility at our bus depot. Um, so I think the 2020s are going to be the decade of fuel cells and hydrogen. It's a both and. We need more long-term storage technologies. And this thing stores 40 kilowatt hours of energy, which they say is 3 times as much as a Tesla Powerwall 2. I don't know what a Tesla Powerwall 2 stores. And
13 and a half.
okay. So
13, 13.5.
and it would cost $23,000.
Tesla Powerwall is about 11,000 installed. The hardware is 7,500. So maybe 13 installed, 12 to 13 installed. Hardware is 7,500. 7,000 for the unit, 500, 750 for the gateway.
But remember, you get
Might be
3x
some extra wiring.
3x the energy
Yeah.
for twice the cost, let's just say. So
Well,
that the dollars and cents actually make sense. And you and I
well,
both know that if the grid goes down, a power wall is not going to be enough. You actually need 2 power walls to have a life. If the grid is down for any length of time, and you need a big solar array. But so I just think it's a both and. I'm
If that
glad to
unit, yeah, if that unit costs 23 grand, it's probably going to add about 5 in installation costs. So we're probably talking a $25 to $28,000 installed unit, which is
sure.
sweet though. A
Just
home
rain,
fuel
rain
cell.
on my parade.
Ah,
It's all good, man. It's all good. It's a little bit of the Wild West still, but let's face
yes.
it, dude. We're in a Wild West industry too. Um, even though our technology is mature, the industry as a whole is not, and it's just it's a very regional and localized industry. So we
Mm-hmm.
better wrap up here though, because I have a hard stop and we need to tell people how they can find you, Mr. Commercial Solar Guy.
Google, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn. Just type in commercial solar guy, commercial solar consultant on the #1 result in Google. So our website, commercialsolarguy.com. We build in Massachusetts, Rhode Island. We're developing a portfolio now in New York. Got projects in Jersey, PA, consulting across the country right now. So a lot of little projects going on. It's good times to be
Is the
doing
PA
solar.
market gonna pop?
I think so. We're waiting on some community solar legislation that's been submitted, and we're going to see if that turns into something. But PA should become something. It's already got a renewable energy certificate at like 3 to 4 cents. So that's a good start.
Cool. Well, I'm Tim Montague, and you can reach me at cesnrg.com/podcast. This is where all of our content lives, both the solar podcast and the Clean Power Hour. I want to thank you, John Weaver, for being my co-host. And please subscribe to the channel, give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and let's grow solar.